are two bolts here that come in from the top that I'd like to take off first. They are 13 millimeter in size, and you can't see them, but they're pretty easy to reach. If you just stick your tool up here, let's just take both of those off all the way. There it is. And there's the second one. These can drop down. There we go. Next, if you go through the driver's side wheel well here, you can turn the wheel, that way you don't have to remove the tire. And you have this splash shield here, which typically you would pop out with some push clips. Mine kind of just falls right off, so I'm going to remove it, and this will give you access to see the power steering cooler line, which is right here. So I'm going to put an 18 millimeter wrench on it. I suggest a flare nut wrench, which looks like this. It has more sides than a regular wrench, and it usually prevents the fitting from stripping out. If you use a regular wrench, you're more likely to round it off. Again, 18 millimeter, put it on here, or break it free. It shouldn't be too tight, and I have a collection bucket underneath, ready to catch the fluid. Just go ahead and remove this line all the way. Keep in mind, like I said, fluid will come out. There it is. Set that to the side. So you can see the hose that comes down to the power steering pump here, and typically has one of these squeeze clamps on it. That's the original clamp, so you would just need some pliers, squeeze it, pull the hose off. For me, somebody replaced it with one of these worm clamps, so I'm going to use a wrench. In my case, I'm using a 1/4 inch wrench. You can also use a screwdriver, whatever you can get in here, and basically just remove the clamp so we can free up the hose from the line. And you can either get it from up top or from the wheel well. There we go. Pull it up. Keep in mind, more fluid will come out. Try to aim it into your collection bucket. Someone wire tied this hose to the other line here, so I'm going to kind of slip it out of it, or you can cut the wire tie. All right, now let's get the line off. Now we can come back underneath and just pull the line out. There we go, that's one end. And fish this end out. And there you have it. I put these two little caps on here. It doesn't come with them, but I had them laying around and I wanted to do this so that I prevent debris from going into the line as I shove the line through and over other things that might be very dirty. So if you have something to cover it, you can even use some electrical tape or whatever you have. It's a good idea to cover up so that junk doesn't get in there. So now let's send this line through. The hose goes right next to the frame over here, and then the line actually goes on the passenger side of the steering box, kind of like this around this shield, and then swoops back around up top as you push it through. So I'm just gonna set this kind of up into position, but I'm not gonna bolt it up yet. I wanna let it hang freely for now so that I can move the lines around with no restriction. Slide it in, and the hardest part of this is going to be starting in the fitting, because you have to be at just the right angle, otherwise the threads won't engage. With it started, which might take a while because you have to find just the right angle, we're gonna go ahead and bottom this out and then make sure that it's nice and snug. All right, so this is bottomed out. I'm going to grab my flare nut wrench so I can get a better grip on it and make it nice and tight with this. Okay, give it one more for good measure. Okay, that's tight. So this line, before you fully tighten it, make sure that you spin it so that it can be facing the right direction. It has to swoop that way. You can't have the bend over this line, otherwise it won't line up to bolt up to the cross member at the front. So, kind of like that. And now you can tighten it up fully. So I have it approximately in the position that I want it to be in, and I'm just gonna use my flare nut wrench and finish tightening this up. Make sure it's nice and snug. There we go. If you have to adjust it later on, just loosen it up and twist the line. Grab the other side hose. I'm going to remove my little cover that I put for preventing debris. And now we can slide it over the line. When you press it down, make sure you press it down all the way until it bottoms out. There we go. And should come with a clamp. Clamp was a little too tight, so I'm going to loosen it up. That way I can slide it down. Some more. You want to be careful with these worm clamps because if you over tighten them, it strips the clamp and then it doesn't do much anymore. You'll have to replace it with a new one. So just go until it's snug and then maybe a little extra, but just be careful. Alright, that should be good right there. It's squishing the hose a little bit, making a nice tight seal. I can't pull it off. Let's put the two bolts back here. Drop it down through the top, line it up. Now line it up with this plastic insert and just thread it in. There we go. All right, snug this one up, and let's put the other one in as well. Nice and tight. Don't over tighten it because this is just plastic. Don't forget about this splash shield. Again, if you had your push clips that came out normally, just slide them back through. My splash shield is broken, or kind of broken, so I'm just gonna kind of hook it back around like that. All right, now let's fill up the system. This is your power steering fluid reservoir. Go ahead and open the cap, and if you don't want to use a funnel, well, don't, but I made this little makeshift funnel here so I can pour my power steering fluid in a little bit easier. And I'm not going to pour in a lot because, as you can see, or as you have noticed, we didn't lose a ton. So I'm just going to go until I'm about 3/4 full on this reservoir, and then I will show you how to manually bleed the system first, which is important to do before you start up the car. If you don't, then you have air in the system with the power steering pump turning really fast. It's going to actually aerate the fluid. It's going to make it all bubbly, and that is actually worse than you might think. So that's why you want to manually push the air out first. I have the vehicle raised up in the front end so that the wheels are off the ground, and now I'm going to manually turn the wheel back and forth. I can actually hear the air bubbling in the power steering reservoir. I'm going to go back all the way. You want to go lock to lock, which means all the way to one side and then all the way to the other side. And after I do this once, I'm going to check the level of the fluid. So I'm just going to stop here, check the level to make sure it's still full. There we go. There's still fluid in there, so I'm going to keep turning it a few more times. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Pushing those air bubbles out. Go back and forth until none come out anymore. So I've blooded as much as I could manually, and before I start it, I wanted to put the cap in, which is actually also a dipstick. So you can see on one side it says add and then hot. Obviously, if it's below or right about here, you want to add some more fluid. If it's up to the hot, that means when the vehicle is hot after it has been driven, the fluid should be up to this line, not above. And then if you flip it over, has a full cold mark, and that means where we're at right now. The vehicle's cold, it has not been driven, the fluid should be up to this line right here. So let's wipe it off. We'll dip it in all the way and we'll see where it's at. Make sure you go down all the way, pull it back out, and as you can see, we are just slightly above the cold full line, but obviously way underneath the hot line. So what I want to do at this point, I know it's above the cold full, but I still would like to start it because there is definitely more air in the system that the pump will suck out and push up to the top. So this over full cold line, so the fact that it's over full on the cold side is most likely just going to drop down a little bit after we start it. So I'm going to cap this off. And at this point, you would want to start it and do the same thing. Go back and forth with the vehicle running with the steering wheel. And if you hear no whining noise from the pump, you should be all set. If you do hear whining noise, that's usually air in the system, in which case you would want to let this sit for a while, maybe bleed it manually again, or just let it run without turning the steering wheel. Sometimes that also pushes the air out of the system. But after you're done, you can go ahead and top it off, and you should be all set.